Now for more is Oklahoma Senator and member of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, James Lankford. Great to have you in-house. Good to see you, sir.
It's good to see you as well.
What do you think it says about where we are as a culture that a question like that, how would you define a woman, is so darn difficult to answer?
Yeah, this is one of those shocking things about culture that people look at it and just scratch their head and say, this shouldn't be hard. Again, as a married man of two daughters, I can define a woman, but as a single male, I could define a woman.
Right.
Before. It's remarkable to me. This goes back to when I was going through HHS's budget last year, and they refused to use the term mother. They used birthing person instead. This is just something that this administration continues to be able to drive. There's nothing wrong with the word mother. We don't have to use the word birthing person. Mother's worked really, really well for us. The term mother, or the term woman, is self-explanatory, and that at least it used to be.
Yeah, and mother worked, I mean, I'll tell you what, mother worked for a long, long time, didn't it?
Works really well still in Oklahoma.
Yeah, good morning. I think my mom is probably watching this morning, so good morning, Mom. Appreciate you and everything you've done. So I think a lot has been made about Joe Biden telegraphing that he was going to nominate an African-American woman. Had he just nominated a black woman to the court, nobody would have said anything as long as this person was qualified. The fact that he did something that would be illegal in corporate America, if Newsmax was looking for a new anchor or reporter and said, we're looking for a black anchor or reporter, that's against the law. That's illegal. Now we're talking about the highest court in the land. Why is it suddenly okay now? Yeah,
and what's interesting enough, she's going to be dealing with cases immediately, dealing with the universities and say, can university have racial preferences? And say we only allow certain races to be able to come into a university. So it just is a horrible way to be able to set her up, quite frankly. She's a very nice person. I'm not going to support her for the highest court of the land for a lifetime appointment. I have real concerns on how she handles deference on the executive branch and the power of the executive branch, sentencing issues. There were multiple issues. She and I had a great conversation last Thursday, talked about 45 minutes. She's someone you'd want to invite over for dinner and would really enjoy time with. I just don't believe that judicial philosophy should be on the highest court of the land as a lifetime appointment.
Yeah.
And so that's my challenge with this. Let's evaluate everyone based on the content of their character. Let's evaluate everyone based on who they are as a person and their own leadership and their perspective.
Do you expect this to be a squeaker, but she will be confirmed on Thursday?
I do think she'll be confirmed. This is going to be similar to what Democrats actually faced under the Trump administration. We brought forward 3 different Supreme Court nominees, and they couldn't stop it. We don't have the votes to be able to stop her either on it. So all 50 Democrats actually stand together on it, which they've all said that they will. They can move her.
So Justice Kavanaugh, Brett Kavanaugh, and we all remember that hearing not that long ago. The final vote was 50-48 in the Senate. What happened to bipartisanship in the Senate? So Ketanji Brown Jackson, she will take over for Justice Breyer. When he was confirmed 30 years ago, the vote was 87-9. What happened to that bipartisanship?
Yeah, there's an enormous shift that has happened in the Senate trying to be able to deal with this issue of just qualifications. If you go back even 15 years ago, the decision was the president gets to make the decision on this. Are they qualified or are they not qualified? And they would look at someone like Judge Jackson and say, she has the legal background, she has the background in education, here's her caseload and everything. They would say, okay, qualified, not qualified. Now the perspective has really shifted to, is that a philosophy that I would really line up with? Because the cases that she will hear and how she rules, people will look at all of us and will say, you supported that.
Right.
And so it's a very different shift, not only in the Senate, but also in America as well.
Yeah, good point. Senator Lankford is sticking around with us. He'll be back with us on the other side of the commercial break. Senator, thank you so much.
You bet.
Stay with us. More to come right here on Wake Up America. We'll be right back.
I know that President Zelensky is really making a massive appeal for more help from the United States, from the West, from NATO, and from other allies, European Union. But we really need to get other international actors to step up. We've had Japan and South Korea, for example. There's been protestations about the conflict in the United Nations General Assembly from countries like Ghana and Kenya. But there needs to be more, because Russia wants to portray this as a proxy war between the United States and Russia for Ukraine. That is not what this is.
Okay, so that's a fascinating soundbite there from Fiona Hill, former director of the National Security Council, talking about the fact that other countries need to recognize the atrocities that Russia has been committing for the last 40 days. Let's welcome back in Oklahoma Senator James Lankford. Senator, I know you just heard that soundbite there from Fiona Hill. How important is that and that side of this story as well?
It is very important, and it's also something that's already occurring. I find that interesting, just her statement there. There have been a lot of countries in Europe and around the world that have engaged in this.
Non-NATO countries.
Non-NATO countries and NATO countries as well that have engaged significantly in this, not only moving troops, but equipment, providing supplies, I
Right.
should say, even lethal equipment of actually what they're sending in. So we have nations in the past that have said back up and said, okay, that's Ukraine, that's not us. This time it's different. You compare 2014 when Russia rolls in the Donbass, takes over Crimea, and the world seemed to yawn. It's very different now. But people should remember Ukraine and Russia have been in a hot shooting war since 2014.
Right.
Every day since that time period, there's been shooting and killing that's been going on in Donbass. This is just a different level, and the world has responded in a different level.
Yeah, so we keep hearing about what we are sending. What we don't hear about is what we're not sending.
Right.
A couple weeks ago, it was those MiG-29s, those Soviet-era MiG-29s. Now it's Soviet-era tanks. What do you make of that? Are you for or against that type of weaponry?
I would say anything that shoots, they need to have right now, quite
Right.
frankly. The Ukrainians are looking to be able to defend their own nation. They're defending all of Europe, quite frankly, from the Russians moving past Ukraine into Poland and continuing to be able to roll. Putin made it very, very clear at the very beginning. Ukraine was once part of Russia, and so was Poland. I mean, he was laying down the marker saying, I'm going to take what I want to be able to take. So really, the Ukrainian military right now is protecting all of Europe. So we do need to provide them the equipment that they need to be able to protect themselves. The problem that we've had and in the Senate, and I've had specifically with the Biden administration, is how slow they've been actually sending aid. The first set of aid got there fairly rapidly, and they seem to be dragging their feet on the rest of it, finding reasons why it can't get there rather than actually just getting it on the ground.
Senator, final question on the war in Ukraine, then I want to pivot and talk about the border. But Winston Churchill had a famous line during World War II. He said, it's not the end, it's not the beginning, it's the beginning of the end. Do you think we are closer to the beginning of this war or closer to the end?
Yeah, it depends on who you ask on that, quite frankly. Do they live in the east of the Ukraine, where they've been fighting since 2014, or they live in the west of Ukraine?
In Lviv or
in
something.
Lviv, that's correct, where they're very far away from the fighting and just rockets have come into them. I would say if you're in the eastern part of Ukraine, it's still in the middle of this. They've got a very long way to be able to go to push the Russians out of their area.
Major crisis to the west, not far from Lviv. 2.3, almost 2.4 million civilians, innocent people, just regular people like you and I, have been forced into Poland alone. 4.5 million refugees. That's how bad this crisis has gotten. But let's talk about the crisis at our own southern border. Doesn't get talked about enough. President Biden laid out his 2023 budget. In that budget, $150 million to represent illegal immigrants in court if they show up at their court appearances. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's not only $150 million to represent illegal aliens in court, but it's also a dramatic cut in ICE.
Right.
People lose track of the fact we had 2 million people illegally cross our border last year, but we also had a record low number of people actually deporting, about 56,000 last year. So the Biden administration is really playing both sides. They're facilitating individuals coming into the country illegally at the same time that they're not deporting people. And the leadership in Central America is furious about what the Biden administration is doing, because the Biden administration is incentivizing their workers to leave Central America to come to the United States to be able to work. It's killing their economy in Central America, and it's also continuing to be able to hurt ours.
Good point. Two quick ones, if I can. Title 42. This weekend, this is the first time I'd seen this. The CDC is blaming the administration. The administration is blaming the CDC. For Title 42 to remain in place, who does that fall on?
That falls on HHS, CDC, and the Surgeon General. They make the call on that one, and it's amazing to me that everybody's pointing fingers at each other on this. Title 42 was always intended to be temporary.
Right.
It's just during the pandemic time period, but literally during the Biden administration is saying Title 42 is over at the border, but they're firing members of the military that haven't got their vaccinations yet.
Yeah.
They're telling all of us on an airplane you have to be able to wear a mask to be able to get on an airplane, but the pandemic's over at the border.
It's over at the
absurd.
border.
Right.
Yeah, because people from hundreds of different countries don't have COVID-19 or variants.
Correct,
Right?
and they're not requiring individuals to be vaccinated when they cross the border.
Thanks so much for being with us. We
Good to see
appreciate
you.
it. Good to see you as well.